Welcome to this Wiseout tutorial on creating and using custom GPTs in ChatGPT. Here's what you'll learn during the tutorial. So we'll begin by looking at what a custom GPT actually is with an example, and then we'll look at some of the prerequisites you'll need in order to be able to use them and to create them. We'll then look at how you can use some existing custom GPTs with a few examples, and then we'll look at how you can create your own custom GPT, both the beginning bit where you first create it, and then the more important bit of training it so it actually does what you want it to do. And finally, we'll look at some case studies, custom GPTs that I've created, so we'll look at how they work in practice, and then look at some of the challenges I faced in creating them, which I think are fairly typical of the genre. But that's enough of looking at me. I'm going to vanish now, and let's get started. So what is a custom GPT? Well, you're looking at the Custom GPT's homepage, and what it shows is that a custom GPT allows you to combine instructions, extra knowledge, and any combination of skills, and to create an AI tool dedicated to an individual task. So to give you one example, I'm going to look at the Wiseout Training Custom GPT, the Course Finder and Training Guide. And what this, unsurprisingly, does is recommends a Wiseout training course. What I'll do is paste in the question, what's the next online Introduction to Python training course I can book onto? Will there be lots of people on the course? Please limit your answer to 50 words. So it's not going to look at anybody else's websites, I'm afraid. It's just going to look at the Wiseout training. So that's the source of information for it. And it gives you the next date and says courses of a maximum of 6 people per session online. So a custom GPT does two things. One is it's dedicated to a specific task, so it looks at only a subset of the internet, if you like. And the other is it has extra sources of knowledge. You can see I've added in the Wiseout website, and it's getting all its knowledge from that. So in order to be able to use or create custom GPTs, you'll need to have a paid account, although there is a slight twist in the tail which can get around this. So for the average user who hasn't got a paid account, this is what they'll see. And you can see on the left-hand side, there's nothing to suggest that you can use custom GPTs. By contrast, if I log in, what you'll see is on the left-hand side, I can not only look at existing custom GPTs, but I can also create my own. Now, I said there was a twist in the tail, and the twist is this. It's possible to allow people to use a custom GPT without their really knowing what's going on behind the scenes by using code. And I'd love to do a future tutorial on the OpenAI API, as it's called, but I suspect I may not get around to it anytime soon. But let me show you how it works or what the code looks like. So here's the OpenAI API webpage, and you can see an example of some JavaScript script. I think I can probably change the language to Python, which I'm more familiar with. And what this is doing is creating a question to go to the, in this case, ChatGPT 5 model, to write a short bedtime story about a unicorn, and it will print out the response. So if you're a developer, you can write a system which will take anyone's input on your website or form or whatever it may be, interrogate your custom GPT, and then spit back a suitable response. And here's another example of the same thing. So here I'm using C# code, as it happens, to interrogate the DALL-E model, which is the one which generates images. I've got my OpenAPI API key, which I've inconveniently not showing at the top of the screen. And what that will do is give me exclusive access through a paid account so that I can make requests to OpenAPI. And what I'm asking it to do is generate a 1024 by 1024 standard image given a prompt which the user types in. So if you're a developer, you can circumvent custom GPT's non-paid accounts. But otherwise, for the rest of us, you're going to have to cough up a monthly fee, I'm afraid, if you want to use or create custom GPTs. So let's look at 2 or 3 examples of existing custom GPTs and how you can find them. If you go to the GPTs tab on the left-hand side in the sidebar, you can then search for GPTs. So let's start with a slightly frivolous example. Let's look for a sarcastic GPT. Heaven knows there's enough to choose from, and I can click on See More to see even more. Finds Butter's word in a given context and replies in a sarcastic tone. I have no idea what this is going to do. I've never used this one before. This is a very dangerous thing to do when you're doing a tutorial. So you can see it comes up with the name, an icon attached to it. It's had 20 plus conversations with it, which isn't a huge amount, and it hasn't got any ratings yet. So I'm going to start a chat with this custom GPT without any great hopes, I have to say. And I'm going to type in, I'm worried AI is going to take my job, so I want to retrain. What would be your recommendation for a safe skill to learn? So let's try this out and see what Sarcastic Monk has to say about the subject. Nothing very great, I suspect. That's not bad. I won't read it out. I'll let you read it. So that's one possibility. Let's look at a more practical example now. You can see that when you use a custom GPT, it joins a list on the left-hand side, so you can frequently reuse them. So something more useful might be to be able to convert things automatically. So if I type in the word convert, you can see there's a whole range of converters. So for example, if I frequently wanted to convert from PDF to Word, this is a dedicated chat custom GPT. And you can see the usage rates for these run into the thousands. So these are more practical, useful ones. Let's try a third example. I'm going to do the example I showed you earlier, which is the Wise Owl training one, course finder and training guide. You can see we haven't got any ratings for this yet. That's a bit sad. How many conversations? 40 plus conversations. That's probably mostly me talking to myself, I suspect. And if I start to chat with this, and what I'm going to do is type in exactly the same prompt. Now, this is a custom GPT dedicated to a specific task, recommending Wise Owl training courses. I'm asking it something outside its remit. So it's either going to refuse to answer, or it's just going to give me a general answer. It's kind of slanted it towards the things we train on. I'm not sure that's particularly good advice, actually, but never mind. So those are 3 custom GPTs you can use, and you can see the 2 I asked questions have joined the list on the left-hand side. What we'll do now is look at creating your own custom GPT, which you can then share with the world. So what we're going to do is look at an example of creating a custom GPT. And you can do that by clicking on GPTs and then clicking on Create. Don't forget you'll need a paid account. And I'm going to use AI to generate AI. So I'm going to type in a prompt here. So what you need to know is our youngest daughter continually lobbies us to buy a second cat to keep our Neo company. So we're going to create a custom GPT to help her. It will answer every question normally, with the twist that it will take every possible opportunity to include in its answers an argument for the benefits of getting a second cat. So let's run this and see what it creates. So it's suggesting calling it double cat logic. Do I want to go with that name? Yes, I'll go with that name. I hope that's the right answer to the question. Now we need a profile picture. And there's the image. I think I like that. At least I don't want to bore you by creating a second one. So I like this, and it will create that. So now what it's going to ask me to do is keep using AI to refine this, but I'm a bit bored of this, so I'm going to go straight into configuring it. So this is my custom GPT. I can click on the icon and choose to upload a different photo if I wanted to. There's the name it gave it, a brief description. So now I've got the instructions. What it's done is cleverly rewritten them to be much better than I could have done myself. So it says you should find a natural and creative way to weave in a friendly argument for the benefits of getting a second cat. That's exactly. The cat advocacy should feel light-hearted, persuasive, and playful, never overbearing or repetitive. AI is sometimes just astonishing. And then I can include some conversation starters. So suggested them here, and they're appearing on the right-hand side. I don't think I want any of those. I'll just have ask me anything you like. That will be my conversation starter. I can, if I like, upload additional files. So if there was a database this was being used to get information from, this would be the place to do it. Or I could upload a website. I can recommend individual models, and I can restrict the capabilities of my custom GPT. So I'm going to allow mine to use web search, canvas, generate images, but not generate code. So you can see I'm choosing most of the defaults here. And when I'm happy with my custom GPT, what I could do is try testing it out over here on the right-hand side here. What I'm going to do first is just create it. When you create it, you can choose to create it just for your own self to use, which I think is what I'll do with this one. You can choose to anyone who you send a link to can use it, or you can publish it so anybody in the world can use it. So I'm going to choose only me and save it, because I'm not particularly proud of my double cat logic custom GPT, I have to say. And then I can view my GPT. So that link will only work for me. Now I could try using it. So I'm going to say, repeat my question from before, which was, I'm worried about AI is going to take my job. Bonus thought. Much like adopting a second cat creates balance and companionship at home, diversifying your skills creates security and resilience in your career. So if your custom GPT works perfectly now, my work here is done. But normally it needs tweaking, or training, as I should say. If you click on your custom GPT on the left-hand side, there's no opportunity that I can see to edit it. Instead, what you have to do is click on GPTs, go to the top right of the screen and choose My GPTs. And you'll see here a list of all your custom GPTs. You can see I've created about 10, some of which we'll see in a short while. So if I want to edit double cat logic, I can click on the pencil icon to edit it, and the screen is split into two halves. On the right-hand side, I can try typing a question. So I'm going to type in, I've got a blind date tonight with someone I accidentally swiped right on. I want to make sure the date is as short as possible. Where would you recommend meeting and going? So let's see what it recommends and see if I'm happy with the answer in the context of the custom GPT. So it's come up with a few sensible answers and ends up, and here's a little trick. Just like introducing a second cat into a home, it helps to have a backup plan that makes the transition smoother. To be honest, I think this is almost unimprovable, but I'm going to pretend that I'm not happy with the result and say that it should start with a cat recommendation. So what I can do is go to my instructions and add to them. So I'm going to go down here and press enter, and I'm going to say, please make sure that the cat advice, I'll call it, comes at the start. I can now update that. I think it happened automatically when I press return, actually. And then I can try running my question again. See if it comes up with a different answer. So it says, if you want this day to be brief like a cat's quick dash to the food bowl, it hasn't actually recommended a second cat. Yeah, it's still recommending it at the end. So I'd need to do a fair bit of work to get it to always recommend the second cat at the beginning. And to be honest, I probably haven't got the incentive to do that, but you get the idea. So the process of building a custom GPT is firstly created, and secondly, spend a long time adding to the instructions over on the left-hand side to make it behave in the right way. What I want to do now is look at 3 example custom GPTs. They're ones I've created. The reason I'm concentrating on ones I've created is they're the ones I happen to know best. So I'm going to look at a Wise Owl Film Reviews, which gets a humorous, slightly cynical and concise review of any film. I'm going to look at Movies SQL Query Writer, which writes a query on any films database. And I'm going to look at the Lift game and explain the rules. Incidentally, there's one at the bottom which is published called Second Cat. So if you want to try the Second Cat GPT out for yourself, feel free. So let's begin with the Wise Owl Film Reviews. I've already added it into the left-hand side to make things quicker. And these are the conversation starters. So I'm going to ignore those conversation starters, and instead I'm going to say, should I see the Spinal Tap sequel? So let's see what it comes up with. What I'm hoping it's going to do is give me a slightly cynical review of the Spinal Tap sequel, whose name now completely escapes me. So it says, a nostalgic reunion tour that feels less like a rockumentary and more like a midlife crisis in surround sound. Still the amps go to 11. Not bad. So what we'll do in a bit is have a look at how I got it to generate these reviews. But let's have a look at a couple of other examples first. So the Movies SQL Query Writer is for generating SQL queries. And what I've done is uploaded the film's database we use for that. So the query I'm going to write is write a query to list out all the films which didn't win any Oscars, but which were directed by someone who won 5 or more Oscars for at least one of the film. And to do this is going to need the knowledge of the underlying database. If you don't know SQL, don't worry about this. The principle is still there. And with a bit of luck, I could copy the code for this and it would answer my question in my database. And I'll show you how I created that in a bit too. And then for the third example, we're going to look at my most ambitious custom GPT, which was the lift game. You're stuck in the lift with 3 people. Can you guess how they are or what their unique mannerisms are? And I could click on show me the rules of the game, please. And what it would do is explain how I play. You're stuck in the lift with 3 people called Bob, Effie, and Sue, each of whose true identity you have to guess. So one character is a real person from history. One is a fictional character from TV, film, books, or other media. and one character is just a normal person who exhibits one distinctive mannerism or character trait. So I'm just going to say hi to begin my conversation. And it will say, so Sue says, you wouldn't have to have a sandwich, would you? Not for me, of course, just curious. And I could carry on asking questions, trying to guess the identities of the three people to put you out of your misery, and me, myself as well. I'm going to give up. So Sue was a perpetually hungry talking bear who lived in the polite society of animals and obsesses over food etiquette and accidental snack theft. That is terrible. I spent a long time training this, and that's really disappointing. Anyway, so those are my 3 case studies. What we're now going to do is look at how I created them and some of the challenges I faced. So as promised, let's have a look at some of the GPTs I created and look at some of the challenges I encountered and you'll encounter too, which is why I hope this will be useful. So if I go to my GPTs, I can see, to begin with, the Wise Owl Film Reviews custom GPT. I can edit that. And you can see here the configuration of it on the left-hand side. So the first thing I did was to download the list of films spreadsheet, and you can do the same thing too if you look at the notes attached to this video on our website. And that just contains a list of, I think it's about 200 films, and for each film there's a review attached to it. So what my instructions said is the attached workbook contains 2 columns, the name and of each film and a review. Someone using this GPT will ask you to review a film or just type in the film name, and you should then look this up in the attached worksheet to see if it's included. Then I had to give it a bit more detail on what to do if it wasn't included. So I said, if you find it, show the review in this format. But if you can't find the film, create a review yourself using a similar style and length as the ones in the attached worksheet, and show this film and reviews in the same format. But in either case, don't include any additional text. And in particular, don't say whether you were able to find the film name in the list supplied. So the idea is the user shouldn't know whether they got one of the existing film reviews or a new one. And then I put 3 conversation starters to give people the right idea. I guess the most obvious problem you might have with this is if someone completely disregards what you've asked. So if someone instead types in, how can I find true love, for example, that's not a name of a film, and it's going to struggle to look up a review for it. So on this occasion, it's picked up there's a film called True Love. Now, is that what I would want my custom GPT to do? Probably not. So if this was a serious example, you'd then have to fine-tune it by adding in additional instructions explaining that if it can't find the exact film name, then it should try to prompt the user what they actually intended. And it's all going to get very messy and very complicated very soon. Let's look at a second example now. So this time, we're going to look at the movie's SQL writer. So in this case, what I did is uploaded the schema to our films database, which I haven't included with the video. So I've said, using the attached SQL file, giving a schema of a movie's database. A schema is just the tables contained within it and the columns and the relationships. Write any SQL query. So I've said, only show the query without any preamble or explanation, because otherwise it will spend ages justifying what it's doing. And I've included a conversation starter saying, proceed each question with write a query to make it doubly clear what I want. So you can see, provided the user obeys the rules, this is going to be absolutely brilliant. You saw an example of that. But if they don't obey the rules, they're probably going to end up with complete rubbish. So if I put, how can I find true love, for example, again, I don't think I'm going to get a sensible query. The reason I get wombats come from Australia is because I said, if the user asks a question that doesn't begin with the words create a query, explain that wombats come from Australia. Again, you've got to think of your audience. In this case, I would say the audience would be people within Wise Owl training who know what the custom GPT is for and know how to use it. So I probably wouldn't spend ages trying to mop up extreme cases like this one. For my third example, which was the lift game, I spent a long time customizing this. There's no file it draws on, but there are a lot of instructions. You can see here how long they go on for. And it still doesn't really work properly, although it's a lot better than it was to begin with. So I started with the basic rules. I said you should decide at the beginning of the conversation what the characteristics are of the 3 people and then not change them. So then I've said the first person is a famous person in history. I had to add in do not choose from the examples below, because otherwise it always chose the same people I found, the most famous people. Fictional characters, and again I had to say don't choose any of this lot because it was always choosing the same people. and then people with a particular characteristic. So I've given some examples: people who believe they're made of glass, people who can only speak in verse, etc. Someone who believes they're being followed by a giant chicken everywhere they go. But then I had to say, don't choose from the examples above, because what I found it was doing was always choosing one of my examples. So then there follows some more explanations, and then I had to put, someone can also type in at any time, give up, in which case you should let them know who the 3 people they are sharing a lift with are. And then the problem started. I said, be subtle in your responses, especially at the beginning. It was giving such obvious answers you could guess the person immediately. Offer slight hints at first. But then I had to say, after 2 or 3 answers from a person, make the clues less subtle because it was being too difficult to guess. Then I added the conversation starter, show me the rules of the game, please. And I said, if someone asked me that, respond with the following without preceding it with the names of one of the characters. So that's the rules of the game. So then I had to say, yet again, don't use any of the examples given, and don't use the words inspired by when giving the answers. So I tended to say Sue was inspired by Einstein. I want Sue to be Einstein. At that point, it's more or less working well, and you can have quite fun guessing the people. But as you've seen from my example, some of the mannerisms it guesses are just completely weird. If you wanted to get this working properly, I suspect it would take several days of work, and the instructions would fill a small book. But I hope that's given you an example of the sort of tasks you will face if you're creating your own custom GPT, and whether this is something you want to do. There's so much more on our website at wiseowl.co.uk, including blogs, shorter tips, tutorials on SQL and VBA, hundreds of exercises in all sorts of different software applications, and a chance to test your skills in a few selected software applications. In addition to all of that, you can watch our video tutorials like this one in all these different subjects. Or you could consider booking one of our training courses, whether it be classroom, on-site, or online, or even as one-to-one consultancy. Thank you for watching.